Hello and welcome back to Explaining Acro. I'm Ben and this is Cassandra, and today we're going to be teaching you the basics of foot to hand. Foot to hand is a foundational skill of partner acrobatics. It allows both base and flyer to practice bracing, balance, and tension, and has massive carryover to skills like hand-to-hand, as well as other dynamic standing acro moves. If your primary practice is L-basing, it can make washing machines easier and unlock difficult transitions. To get started, we're going to talk about grip. Now, there are a lot of different grips that people might use depending on the situation. However, we're going to teach what we call acro grip. This is a grip that can be used for a variety of situations. We feel that it works really well for single limb flyer balances. It translates well for dynamic skills where eventually throwing and catching the flyer, and it has excellent carryover to hand-to-hand. As a base, the goal of my grip is to give me control over the flyer's foot while maximizing the area of contact between my hand and the flyer's foot. I'm thinking about this triangle on my hand that's formed by the heel of my hand, the base of my index finger, and the base of my thumb, and I'm going to be putting that triangle somewhere in the arch of the flyer's foot. I'm making sure to push through my entire hand rather than pinch with my thumb. Ideally, the heel of my hand is going to be around the ball of the flyer's feet so that they can grip around it and have some additional stability. However, depending on the exact proportions of the flyer's foot and the base's hand, the exact placement might vary. To figure out where that should be, we like to have the flyer lie on their stomach and present their foot like this so that the base can come and apply pressure and slide the foot up and down and figure out what feels best for the both of them.
As a flyer, I'm checking in for any gaps that are between the base's hand and my foot. I want to ensure that they're covering as much surface area as possible on my foot and that their hand isn't pinching. I'm also curling my toes around the base's wrist for additional stability and grip.
Now that we've talked about what the palm of the hand is doing, we're going to spend some time talking about this index finger. Now, I'm trying to make sure that this index finger is on the inside of the flyer's heel. The flyer's heel has this natural curvature. If I'm on the inside and the flyer is externally rotating their leg, this finger is going to be moving uphill, and as a result, it's not going to go anywhere. If I'm on top of the heel, or even outside of it, and the flyer externally rotates, then I'm going to slide around, and I'm going to switch into something that looks more like a C grip.
Now that we've talked about the grip, we're going to move on to talking about body positions. And we're going to start with flyers. So flyers, one of the most common things we see in foot-to-hand body positions are ribs sticking out. So we're going to start with really focusing on the core. With the ribs, we want to think about pulling the ribs down and engaging our abs. And we also want a neutral pelvis. For me, that means I need to tuck my hips under, squeeze my glutes while still keeping these ribs down and my abs engaged. From here, we want to be standing on our entire foot and then a slight lean forward to where someone could slip a piece of paper under our heels. And what this leaning does is it allows us to shift our weight from the base's knuckles into their wrist, which is going to be stronger. We want to make sure we utilize our entire foot, not going up on releve and not being on our heels, but making sure that our whole foot is engaged.
A common mistake we see in foot to hand is that flyers' toes are not curled around the base's ankle. The curling of our toes in the grip allows us to engage the rest of the foot and the ankle, creating tension and stability.
Bases. We're going to be on our backs here. We want to think about pulling our shoulder blades down and slightly back in order to generate tension in our chest and our back to help stabilize the shoulder. Our wrists are going to be roughly over our elbows. We don't want them to be too far towards our face or too far past our elbows. It's not going to be a perfect 90 degrees, but they should be roughly aligned. Now, this is a little bit controversial. However, I like doing most of my practice with bent knees as opposed to straight legs. Bent knees is going to give us additional core stability, particularly if we're thinking about pushing our feet into the ground and pushing our feet out slightly in order to help stabilize our core. A common cue I see given is to have bases bring their elbows as close as possible to their sides. This cue can be counterproductive because you actually can lose tension if you bring your elbows too close. You want to think about bringing the shoulder blades down and slightly back in order to maximize tension here. And if there's a little bit of gap between the elbow and the side of the body, that's okay. Some say that we want to have our hands closer together for flyer comfort for L-base foot to hand and hand to hand. However, I think it's more important to focus on base stability, particularly if we want to be training things like one arm and one foot positions. In the extended position, I think that we can make accommodations for the flyer's anatomy and think about putting feet more at hip width. Now we're ready to begin stepping into foot to hand. I recommend working with a spotter if you haven't done this before. Otherwise, we're going to have bases start with their legs in the air, and then one by one, the flyer is going to present their feet. I'm going to establish my grip, put my hand on the ground, establish my grip, put my hand on the ground. Now, we're going to work together to lift this right foot up. I'm thinking about keeping my wrist at something between a 35 and 45 degree angle. And I'm going to be pushing gently through this left hand, but I'm not trying to lift her off the ground.
Flyers, we want to take these feet and we're going to use them as stabilization if we don't have a spotter. The foot that the base has, we want to make sure that we're curling our toes around the wrist, and this is going to help engage the whole foot and the ankle. From here, we want our knee to go over our toe to make sure we stack our weight, and then we gently pour our weight onto the base's hand, going up into our standing position.
Here, I'm thinking about pushing up and into the flyer's hip in order to help stabilize them.
Flyers, up here, we want to go through that mental checklist of our body position, checking if the hips are tucked, that our ribs are down. We want to be squeezing our legs in, just gently helping the base, and then curling those toes around the wrist.
In order to come down, I'm going to open my hands while maintaining my wrist angle.
Flyers, while we hold this body shape, we gently lean forward until we go to the floor, ensuring that we're not jumping off of the base's hands.
When I'm spotting foot to hand, I'm standing slightly behind my flyer at their side. This stops them from reaching to me and throwing the balance off. As I step in, I can have my hands close to the flyer's waist, and once they're actually in that foot to hand, I can put this foot near the base's elbow in case things are unstable. These guys are pros, so I don't have to be that close. Whenever they're ready, they can come down, and I can keep my hands kind of on the belly and back of the flyer and stabilize the landing. When stepping into foot to hand, you can begin to step in using only one of the base's legs before removing the legs entirely. You can also start to grip the flyer's second foot after the flyer has stepped in, ensuring the flyer is presenting the foot for it to be grabbed rather than stepping directly into the base's hands. Once you are comfortable stepping into foot to hand and holding it for 5 to 10 seconds, you are ready to start adding in variation. For building comfort in foot to hand, we recommend incorporating range of motion. Bases can begin to add in twisting and pressing. Flyers can squat and shift their weight from side to side. For a more dynamic variation, we like earthquakes and skyquakes. We highly encourage the use of a spotter the first time you try these. For earthquakes, the base is going to move their arms in all directions really quickly while maintaining control over their movements. The flyer is going to work to stabilize. In skyquakes, the roles are reversed. The flyer is going to move in all directions while retaining control, and the base is going to stabilize. Thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions or things that you want to share, please continue the conversation in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more free videos in the future.
Sorry, that clap was silly.